Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We are so glad you're joining us again today. And we got a fascinating guest. What we're going to have, he called it a spirited conversation. I'm really looking forward to the next hour. Now, do you remember the worst leader you ever worked with? Well, today's guest, Dr. Andy Neillie, does. Over two decades ago, he worked for someone who made every day harder than it needed to be, not just because of poor leadership, but because he lacked empathy, direction, integrity, and quite frankly, he was just a bad boss who was also not a very good person. That experience and the stories Andy heard from countless others lit a fire in him. No one should have to endure that kind of leadership in the workplace. That fire has fueled his journey over the last several decades to understand what truly makes a great leader. Not just the strategies, but the soul of leadership. The kind of character that earns trust, builds emotional connections, and invests the time required to achieve real change. Andy's doctoral research focused on the personal side of leadership, and his writings, including, and we're going to jump into this, I want to hear the rest of the story, including his best-selling book, The Golden Principles, Life and Leadership Lessons from a Rescue Dog, which emphasizes the power of patience, empathy, and consistent love in leadership. In 2015, The Golden Principles was honored by Amazon with the top 100 Best Books of the Year award. What started as a reaction to bad leadership has now evolved into a deep belief. Leadership is always personal. Whether he is writing, speaking, or coaching leaders around the globe, Andy's passion is helping them embrace the slow, powerful, people-first work of transformational leadership. Millions of miles, thousands of leaders, and hundreds of stories later, Andy still believes this: love earns trust, time builds momentum, and leadership is never about you. It's about those who you're called to serve. Andy, welcome to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast, man. I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. It feels like we were meant to spend some time together, because I know some of the things you just cited in my bio could be said about you just as well as they could be said about me, I think.
Well, thank you. I don't have the millions of miles. I got 1 million with United because I used 800,000 of them to take the wife on a really nice vacation in 2024 and we hiked part of the Santiago Camino.
Oh yeah. My wife and I did that a year ago.
Oh man, great experience, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you do the Spain, start in Portugal or the
Portugal? So we did Portugal to Spain portion,
okay.
But we did it as tourists. We got dropped off by van, hiked 6 hours a day, got picked up by a van, and spent the night in a nice hotel. So we didn't do the hostels.
Brother, that's the only way to travel at our age, because we did not we did not carry sleeping bags and sleep in fields or hostels. Yeah, we did the same thing. It was really fascinating. It was a small group. There was only 7 of us, and our guide actually grew up in that part of Spain.
Oh,
so we were on the Camino, and he's like, "Oh, okay, see that path right there? Nobody knows about this unless you grew up here. I'm going to take you to a 500-year-old cemetery.
Wow,
that's like 2 kilometers down that path." And so it was an incredible spiritual, but it was also an incredible, just eye-opening to see the beauty of Spain.
Boy, that's a good way to put it. And you know that if you had told me before I went that Galicia area of Spain. It's just, they consider it kind of almost like their own little country there, and they're very proud of it. And you understand why. It's stunningly beautiful, beautiful.
It was great. And we were so blessed. We had 1 day of rain. So it what a great experience.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We're going to rock and roll now.
All right.
First of all, what's the story behind the rescue dog that led to the book? And then I really want to start diving into your whole perspective on leadership and how to bring about real change. But what's the story behind the book?
Well, so yeah, let's start with Redford. My wife and I have been rescuing dogs since we got our first house early in our marriage, and every house that has a backyard needs a dog. And at that time, we reached out to her parents. We were relatively newly married. They had a good family friend that was a vet, and somebody had just turned into a rescue dog, an abandoned dog out in the desert in Phoenix, Arizona. And so Alex came into our life, and Alex was this very well-trained golden retriever. We still don't quite know the backstory. The vet thought maybe he had been stolen by a construction crew and then left on a job site or something, because Alex was obedient and he wasn't a rescue in the way you and I might think about rescues. But here's what we discovered. We were both working long hours early in our careers. Big dog, a big social, gregarious dog, doesn't do well in an empty house. And Alex was figuring ways every day to break out of our windows and jump over our fence and play with the kids in the neighborhood. And our vet friend said, the problem is your dog needs a dog. And so we rescued a second dog. And that really became a series. And this morning when I left the house, I had dog number 14 and 15 underfoot as I left. And we've typically had 2 dogs along the way. The one you asked about and that you talked about in your intro, Redford, was a real rescue. There was a breeding farm in Arkansas, abuse and neglected. 65 dogs were rescued by the sheriff's department and distributed all over the country. Pat, you and I would know about it there, but there are these passionate golden retriever, and pretty much every breed has them, rescue groups. They showed up with RVs and SUVs, and they put dogs in kennels and ferried them off all over the country. We live in Austin, Texas. Redford ended up in Houston, Texas. We were looking for a companion dog for the one that we had at that point a number of years ago. And Redford was available, and we drove down to Houston. My daughter and my wife fell in love with him immediately. First time I looked at him, he squatted and urinated. He was terrified of big people with loud voices and big personalities. And so we brought Redford into our home, and I had to learn a different way of relating to this wounded-hearted, trust-violated, emaciated, scared dog. And so I ended up just changing the way I treated our dogs. And instead of coming in late at night after one of these 5 million mile frequent flyer trips that I take to work with clients, and my normal MO back then was to drop the backpack and drop the suitcase and yell out at 1 a.m. after the last flight, "I'm home," and expect everybody to come running to me. And Redford would run, but he would run the other direction. He had, we called them his caves. He had places he would go and hide in the house and dig holes in the backyard. And I just had to realize, man, for me to start connecting with this dog, I got to come in quietly and get down on the floor.
Yeah.
I needed to learn to get to his level to be able to have him start trusting me. Another issue we had with Redford is our doggy door went out into the garage and then out to the backyard. And Redford was a runner. And if you opened the garage door with your car as you're coming in and the garage and the doggy door is open, Redford bolted, right? And I would yell at the top of my legs, "No!" And we lived in a cul-de-sac, so there wasn't much traffic, but I couldn't get him to stop. And then a wise vet in my life said, "Andy, why don't you try calling his name affectionately as you start pulling in? Pull him toward you, and really make it a wonderful reunion rather than a yelling at him, a proactive yes instead of a reactive no." And so getting down to his level, learning a proactive yes rather than a reactive no, realizing that trust takes time. Well, Pat, I see you nodding your head and taking some notes. Those aren't dog lessons. Those are leadership lessons, aren't they? And so the end of this brief story is I was sharing a keynote speech called The Redford Principle at an association meeting a number of years ago. And a publisher had a booth in the hallway back behind for this trade association. He and I started visiting, and he said, "You got any other dog stories?" And I told him, I think I'm learned more about leadership from my dogs than I did from 25,000 pages of dissertation research. And he said, that'd make a great book. And so he took the Redford Principle, my keynote speech,
Yeah.
and he said, let's call it the Golden Principle. This is a Golden Retriever, Golden's the Golden Rule. And so the Golden Principles, Life and Leadership Lessons from a Rescued Dog came out. And that was 10 years ago now. As you mentioned, it became a little book of the year on Amazon. By the way, that makes it sound pretty impressive. My wife reminds me regularly, Andy, you made a $4.16 commission check at one point.
Yeah.
For people who are Kindle Prime members, my 99-cent book was free, and Amazon doesn't share any royalties for like a book under $9. At any rate, I spent thousands of dollars giving away copies of my book. But Pat, these are simple truths, but the simple truths are oftentimes the best truths, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I am taking notes. And some of the things that the thoughts that you triggered, and our audience knows this. I say this like virtually every episode because I'm 100% Irish, born in Ireland. So instead of being a golden retriever, I like the Irish setter thing. But I'm the Irish setter in the backyard sees a squirrel, and I take off after it. And when I'm interviewing guests, it's like, oh man, there's a squirrel. What a great thing. I want to follow up on that. Yeah. So we have so much in common. My wife owns her own accounting company, and for years, several decades of living in, when we lived in Dayton, Ohio, one of her clients was the Humane Society. So you talk about rescuing dogs, and I worked midnights for 13 years. And one day I woke up at 4:00 in the afternoon, and I was nose to nose with the dog that wasn't in our house when I went to bed that morning. And we at one time we had 4 rescues at one time.
Okay.
And but we had a half acre, and I had a big 12-foot dog run and stuff. Okay. And our current dog is a 95-pound German Shepherd Husky mix, rescued by a German Shepherd rescue here in Colorado.
Okay.
From Houston, Texas.
Oh, all right. Interesting.
And they drove all the way down there, they drove down with a van and rescued. It was a litter of 10 pups and mom, and rehomed them all here in Colorado. Wow, so great. I totally get.
I admire those people that are dedicated and do that. You know, there's kind of I don't quite know what it is, but they say Houston and then the Rio Grande Valley. They call it the RGV. There's like these shuttles that go down to Houston and the RGV monthly and take dogs to the Northeast and to Colorado. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether it's breeding mills down there. I don't know what it is, but those people have huge hearts, right? We just take a dog into our home and treat them like a pet. These people are doing the hard work.
They are doing the hard work. And the other thing you talked about reminds me of this. It's not a joke. It's kind of like a story, but guy comes home from work. The dog's in the house all during the daytime. And every day he comes home from work and the dog is pooped or peed in the house. So he yells at the dog and tosses it out the window into the backyard, and does this for like 4 or 5 days in a row. And then on day 6, when the owner comes in, the dog looks at him and runs and jumps out the window. Doesn't wait. You know, you condition, a response from people by the way you treat them, and that's a leadership lesson, right, which is I want to get into this, and the guests know this. I don't know how much the audience actually knows this. I don't give questions out in advance. I don't even have a script. I just go organically. Hey, let's see where the conversation goes. So I'm going to kind of hit you with one because I wrote a small piece on this once, and I'd love to get your insights based on your experience and your education.
Sure.
Is there's such a fine line for leaders or people in general, but leaders specifically that are in positional leadership, that a fine line between empathy and compassion. And the piece I wrote was, I would rather be very strong in compassion and have a touch of empathy because of empathetic burnout. And because of what empathy really means is that you are actually taking on emotionally the feelings, and you're not just recognizing them, but you're sharing it, and you can get dragged under.
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts on how do you, or do you even see it that way? Because I see
no. And really, I would say I think you're identifying one of the foundational tenets of how somebody can tell if they're moving from just being a positional manager to truly a leader of people. But Pat, there is not an easy answer, is there? You've wrestled with this. I've wrestled with this. My clients have wrestled with this. I think particularly in the 2020s, there is just this movement toward, gosh, can I call over the top empathy, where it's not just I'm working hard to get on your side of the table. It's, it's the guy that showed up on LinkedIn several years ago, the crying CEO who was in tears because he laid off 70 people. And on the one hand, I appreciate that. But on the other hand, as a small business owner myself, here's the news. You don't lay off those 70 people. The other 170 don't have a job next quarter. And that's the challenge of leadership. I call it the leadership covenant. A covenant is not a contract, but it's not just a relationship. It's both and. Here in Texas, you get married. It's all about the relationship, love and affection till death do us part, forever and ever, romantic. There's also a document that the officiant signs and records with the county clerk. It's both a legal and a form and a personal relationship. And I think you're touching on one of the tensions in the 2020s is how do leaders balance that? I've got to be truly compassionate and at times demonstrate empathy, and I'm still responsible for the KPIs in my organization. And I just think that anybody says they got that, they either need to write the book or quit deluding themselves, because I think all of us wrestle with that. You never know if you get it right. I've fired people that I shouldn't have fired. I kept people on way longer than I should have. I've avoided hard conversations that I needed to lean into. I've had hard conversations that went horrible. And I think any manager that's being honest about their journey to leadership is going to say, man, I'm trying. I'm not sure I'm there yet.
Yeah. That, and especially the hard conversations to have, especially if it's with a toxic employee, is that to keep your emotions in check.
Well, let's add one more ingredient: the toxic top performer employee, because those are the ones that are hard, right? Because they're cranking out product, they're closing sales, they're doing the right stuff for their job, and they're just leaving carnage around.
Yep, carnage. Yep, and I so want to give those people Ryan Holiday's book, Ego is the Enemy, and make them do a book report on it. That leads into kind of another danger. This was a hard lesson for me to learn. I had a lieutenant bring it to my attention in a performance evaluation, and I was in my late 30s, maybe even early 40s. I was a sergeant. I had a squad working for me, and we worked 8 at night to 6 in the morning. And he called me into the office after roll call one evening for my annual performance appraisal discussion and a form I had to sign. And he hands it to me and goes, read it. And so I read through it, and he goes, what did I write under there that says, one of your strengths is? And I go, well, it says leading by example. He goes, then drop down. What area did I say you needed improvement in? And I drop down, and it says leading by example. and his name was Bruce Burt. And he says to me, Pat, do you understand what I mean by that? And I go, Lieutenant, I have no idea. And he goes, let me share something with you. There's a fine line between leading by example and doing somebody else's job for them.
Yeah.
And that you've crossed that line because you're a go-getter. You're out there, you're shagging calls, you're doing a lot of things, but you're not leading by example. You're conditioning and teaching your people, hey, the Sarge will just take care of this. I don't need to worry about it. And that was a really tough leadership lesson to learn.
Well, and one of the things that's true about effective leaders is they have a propensity to act. That's right. That's what they're the ones that are, at times they're ready, fire, aim. We're going to lean in, and all kinds of great things happen when they do that. But the very strength that you're talking about becomes a weakness when you're trying to nurture team members and develop team members and kind of take your hands off the wheel at times. And part of that, Pat, for you was you knew you could do it better, faster than them.
And
but
I didn't want, and
there's one of you and you had 8 people reporting to you, even if they were only 80% as good as you, that's 640 times better than you when you multiply the 8 team members. That's the challenge with the solo performer leader. It's you and I really understand what it means to be a good leader. We're at the bottom of the pyramid. We're not at the top of the pyramid. And that's hard for people that are used to leaning in and making things happen.
Yeah. And the fear of failure. I don't want to be seen as a bad leader because my people make mistakes. But that's how they learn, as long as it's not life-threatening or illegal, or
it's not the same mistake 15 or 16 times, right? It typically takes me 3 times. I'm not real sharp, so I got to make a mistake more than once before I realize it. But you can't.
What are your insights on today's performance evaluation processes, and are we still doing it the way we've always done it and expecting a different result, or from your experience, are there some things we could be doing that would impact not only our hiring but our retention of the good employees that are leaving? They leave because there's bad leadership, and I get that. And part of that bad leadership is they only see, it's not even the leader, it's really just the boss, somebody that's a boss, not a true leader. They only see them when something goes sideways, or once or twice a year for a performance evaluation, which is always geared towards, hey, you got to do, what is it? Management by objectives.
Suck it up, buttercup.
So how do we create a genuine performance related analysis of our folks that that makes a difference in the outcomes?
Well, first of all, I got to give a caveat. While I do indeed have 5 million frequent flyer miles from flying all over the world, working for Fortune 500s, the focus of my energies these last number of years have really been with privately held companies, the $500 million, the $50 million, Chuck in a truck who today has 75 trucks, or Dan in a van that's got 175 people working for them. At that level, they don't have all of the tools that a sophisticated Fortune 500 company might have in terms of 360 surveys and, hiring Forrester or Gartner to do an internal assessment of leadership best practices. Part of the problem that I see is with the clients that I serve and the people that I'm trying to influence, a lot of their evaluation is knee-jerk evaluation. You mentioned the annual review. A lot of the clients I work with, they pull out that annual review, 11 and a half months into this person's year. The annual review ends up being about a 6-week review because that's all the leader can remember. And so at the pragmatic level, helping them put systems in place for ongoing, where the annual review is really based on a monthly developmental coaching conversation where Pat is sitting down with his team member, Andy, once a month, not about the specific project, not about the KPIs, not about the spreadsheets or the sales goals, but just what are you doing in terms of skills and behaviors and culture? Let's have that conversation. And that's a monthly 30-minute conversation. I call it the FAST coaching conversation: focus, assess, analyze, next steps. And so the annual review 12 months in simply becomes a compilation of, hey, Pat's had 12 conversations with Andy, and we've set some goals during those conversations. We've seen some growth. We've seen some areas not working well. You might augment that with a 360. What are your peers saying about you? But so much of that, the tools are out there already. It's the problem is we don't use those tools well, and we have a knee-jerk response. So organizations I work with that really do it well, nobody is surprised at their annual review because they've already had 12 of these conversations with my boss, Pat, along the way.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is your experience. At least mine has been, and mine has been in the military and civilian law enforcement arena, as opposed to the corporate. So, we're not worried about the bottom. Well, I mean, we are worried about budgets, but
it's a different,
it's a different problem. Yeah. And then you got literally you have politics involved. I had 8 police chiefs, either full-time or acting police chiefs in 26 years. So that roller coaster ride it can be very unsettling.
Yeah.
But post law enforcement, in retirement, in my consulting and training business, one of the things that I see most prevalent in poor performance on and at work and off duty. So because it's law enforcement, there's a microscope on you always. The biggest challenge I've seen is that what we call the first 3 tiers. So like when I did the Air Force, I trained thousands of Air Force. They were leading security forces, law enforcement in the Air Force was leading the entire Air Force in Article 15s and court martials. And the 4-star general, Mark Welsh, no relation to me, over the whole Air Force, told Major Rand, who was, or not Major, General Rand, and it was General Welsh, General Rand. General Rand was over security forces. They were under his umbrella. And it came down to this very simple evaluation. Those 19 to 24-year-olds, which the first 3 tiers, airmen, A1C airmen, and senior airmen, did not understand or grasp the coat of arms and the mission and vision of security forces.
Yeah.
And so General Rand hired me to come in. I did about, how many thousands of Air Force cops on about 8 different bases.
Wow.
And what I did though, here I understood why they had this aberration of behavior. Every base I went to their entire squadron, every room. I couldn't find their mission or vision statement posted anywhere except one place. One air base did, and it was in the men's room, and it was it was on the back of the door in the handicap stall. and then I'm like, it's no wonder you have this. So how do you see that in the corporate world or the private sector? How important is mission and vision in creating a culture, what you expect and accept in the way of thinking, talking, and acting within your organization?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think you connected the 2 things that need to be connected. It's ironic. You mentioned mission and vision. I have up on the wall of my tiny little office. We're a 3-person firm. In my little office, I've got vision, passion, and expertise and core values sitting up there, and they're sitting on a wall. I see them every day. But then you added the second thing. They're just up on the wall if they're not incorporated into the culture. So it's got to be a both and, I think. They need to be articulated. They need to be written. In fact, I talk about the 4 leadership necessities that I think if somebody is a manager, wants to become a high-achieving leader, if they're working on 4 areas, I already mentioned one of them, that leadership covenant concept that you and I talked about. The first one really is conviction or vision, the very thing you're talking about. Do they see the bigger picture? Are they thinking broader, bigger, further than their team members? So a leader needs to have that high aim vision that you talk about in the military, right? They've got to be looking down the road. That's what makes a good race car driver, a good race car driver. They're not looking at the next corner. They're looking beyond the next corner to the S curves after that. So do you have your eyes up? But you can't have your eyes so up that you never come back home. And I've got a man that I think highly of out in California, Stan Slapp, who has a leadership practice. And he explains culture like this, Pat. He said, here's what culture is. A new team member joins the team, a new employee gets hired by the company, and a lot of times it's like, hey, I want you to spend the first hour of sometime in the first week, you get an hour with the boss or an hour with the CEO. So they're going to kind of tell you the company background and the story. And so they come marching in and they have their meeting with the CEO. And the CEO might recite the mission and vision and values of the organization. That's not where it gets really caught, though. Where it gets caught is when that newbie walks out, closes the door, is going down the hallway, and a guy from one of the cubes leans over and says, "Hey, new guy, let me tell you what it's really like."
Yep.
That's where culture and what they do, Pat, is they tell the stories of you and me. Hey, I saw Commander Pat do this, and that's how you demonstrated the core values that were really real. And here's the reality for your listeners, Pat. That costs you something. If you're going to lead and really reinforce that, there have been short nights of sleep. There have been out-of-pocket costs. I saw something several years ago. The average elementary school teacher spends $3,000 out of their own pocket on kids' stuff every year.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to say I think a good leader does the same thing. There is a path between that good leader's home and Krispy Kreme donuts and the office on days that everybody's in the office. There are gift certificates to nice restaurants or catalog shops that the leader doesn't have any place to really budget those. It's just understood. Pat did that because it was the right thing to do. Andy pulled something off. He went above and beyond, and Pat wants Andy to know, man, you're reinforcing our culture. You get a PTO. It's not even been written down. Just go take your son fishing.
Yeah, that's it. I'll tell you, you're so spot on. All these things are, and it's not just at work. Here's how it was taught to me, or the way I finally realized it and internalized it, is that people throw around, especially in law enforcement, especially in the public, sector, is they will scream left and right, you need to change the culture of, and then the police department or your trash collection or, whatever it is. And that's what the community is saying, change the culture. And I have learned that I need to ask a lot of questions and be a better, try to be a better listener, which is hard for a guy that's a Irish talker. And so I started asking people, define culture. And I'm telling you, so often it came back to a very myopic, narrow, they're talking about race. They're not talking about
interesting.
That's their definite. So we're not even talking the same language kind of deal. Because what I learned was the how you arrive at your culture is this. Everything begins with the thought. And you have 80,000 thoughts a day, 50,000 of them are negative, or there's some data out there that says that. But everything begins with the thought. And then when you have a settled way of thinking, that becomes an attitude. An attitude is displayed in behavior. I can't read your mind, but your parent, your dad said, or your mom, I don't like your attitude. What they're saying is, I don't like the way you're behaving because it's telling me what's going on up here in your noggin. And then those repeated behaviors become your habits. Then your habits become your culture. And my definition was, which still is, culture is the expected and accepted way of thinking, talking, and acting within a group.
Yeah.
If I want to change the culture of my organization, my family, my community, my neighborhood, I have to start with getting people to change the way they think. But what we do is we just impose more rules and regulations, and the beatings will continue until morale improves, kind of mindset. So how can we in the workplace or even in our family lives develop having it who said start with the end in mind?
Stephen Covey.
Start with the end in mind. Well, if the end in mind is what I want out of people is X, Y, or Z, and here was my X, Y, and Z. You have your mission, vision, core values, and everything.
Right.
I laminated, and it was this simple of what I expected and accepted from the people that I was responsible for and for myself. Do the right thing, do it at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. Those 4 things were laminated outside my door. And because I had that lieutenant goes, fine line between leading by example, I learned that when I was a lieutenant and a sergeant came in and goes, hey, boss, I have this problem with somebody on the squad. First thing I would say is, well, what do you think is the right thing to do? I'm not going to do your job for you. But I was in my late 40s before I learned that.
Well, and I think that points to, that can you be an extraordinary leader in your early 20s? I mean, you and I both have a passion for sports. We've talked about it a little bit. And, I live in Austin, Texas. The legacy of Colt McCoy 15 years ago now still lives on in Austin because he was the winningest college quarterback. And he was just this extraordinary young man in his late teens and early 20s. So I think there are unicorns like Colt McCoy, but I think for most of us, the way we realize the type of leadership you and I are talking about is we made mistakes along the way. And it doesn't surprise me that you said you were in your 40s before you finally got that right. Part of what defines a truly effective leader in the 2020s is a high degree of kind of self-effacing humility, but humility in the right way. You've got a big personality, Pat, that nobody's going to say Pat's a humble, withdrawn guy, but that humility where, man, I don't know, what do you think we should do? Even though Pat knows what should have been done, he's going to work at pulling it out of that other person, because if it's always Pat's idea, nobody's really having to take any initiative. And so that kind of servant leader humility, where my job is to make you better, it is not to make me look good. And oh, by the way, when I get all 8 of you looking better, I end up looking pretty good, but that's not my goal.
Right.
And I think in the 2020s, with this celebrity influencer world that we're inundated with, if I can just get my 10,000 followers on TikTok, we completely upended that cart, right? There is nothing about true leadership in a celebrity influencer world. And so
no, there isn't.
You kind of got me up on one of my soapboxes.
No, that's awesome. But I just had to write down it. For every Colt McCoy, there's also a Johnny Football. The other end. You know who I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah.
A brief flaming moment, and then just an embarrassment to A&M and Texas and everything.
Cleveland and the Cleveland Browns and everything else.
Right.
And I like what you were saying about it. It's not about me, using my people to be a stepping stone for my career or whatever, but it is about you. If you are developing those relationships with people, I tease people when they go, "Oh yeah, cops eat donuts." I'm like, "Hey, this is the 21st century. We're croissants and lattes." We've evolved from Krispy Kreme, but
my half moon latte, my hazelnut sweet, please.
But I would we got paid twice a month on the police department. It was always on a Friday, and in our work shift, that Friday night work shift of that second pay period, I would tell the squad, the guys and gals that were working, hey, Sliders. It was a bar that opened like at 6 a.m. There was a cop bar. Sliders after work. First round of beers is on me. We order wings and beer. Shoot, after I had my first beer, I'd tell them, hey, you guys have a great time, and I'd head on home. But you're building relationships and connections, because at some point in time you are going to do something stupid or foolish, or I accidentally shot a chair in my office, and it's a funny story, but I'm not going to get into it. But having built up those relationships with my people, is they didn't treat me like an outsider because I did something really stupid, accidentally shooting a chair. So it's what do they call it? It's like making those deposits in the bank.
Yeah.
And I which I really get.
But there are a couple of truisms about those deposits, Pat, and we mentioned Stephen Covey's name a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
His son wrote the book, The Trust Count. You just referred to the trust deposits. Here's what you and I need to recognize, and all of the aspiring leaders that are following you. Deposits, unfortunately, in a leadership team member world, deposits by their very nature are small, and withdrawals by their very nature are large.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is I can't just show up once in a while and do a nice thing. I have got to be for my people on an ongoing basis, because a withdrawal is going to come. I'm going to make a mistake, or something bad's going to happen. Hard decisions are going to have to be made, and deposits are typically small and withdrawals are typically large. So you and I've got to be making those deposits all along the way.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
Great analogy. Here's something I haven't had to deal with, because being semi-retired at least. What are some of the biggest challenges people in leadership and management type positions face now because of the virtual teams and everybody working remotely during COVID, and then got used to it, and now it's still going on? What are the biggest challenges that you see the folks you're working with facing, and how do you deal with them?
I'm not sure I'm an expert in the area. I do have some clients I work with that, they've gone back to in the office 2 days a week, remote 3 days a week, or in the office 3 days a week, remote 2 days a week, partly to try to address that. I still don't think we've got it figured out, because here's what I think we all realized, 6 years ago when the lights got turned off and the doors got locked. Those of us that pivoted well, and we got our Zoom camera set up and our microphone wired and figured out how to do Teams or StreamYard or Zoom or WebEx, I could get a lot more work done at home at times than I could at the office. In fact, I could get 8 hours of work done in 5 hours and still have time to take the dogs to the park, or get my hair cut, or run an errand, and still I was checking off all of my to-do lists. So part of it, I think, was a really healthy recognition of what is true productivity. Now, part of what was lost is Pat and Andy didn't get any time hanging out in the lunchroom, just shooting the breeze, because that's a lot of time where I catch culture from my boss. And so we're trying to figure out the tension of that. And once again, I think it's a leadership tension, because leaders naturally should assume the best while watching for the worst. Mm-hmm. Assume the best, assume that positive intent, right? You and I both heard that from every HR workshop we've ever gone to. Assume positive intent. I say a good leader has a critical eye, but not a critical spirit. A critical eye, but not a critical spirit. Jason Thomas is a guy that I've admired for years. He's today with one of the senior leaders of a large Christian nonprofit back in Milwaukee. And Jason is one of these, he was a consultant for one of the big four firms, wicked smart, probably smarter than you and me put together, 160 IQ, and handsome and winsome and articulate. He didn't miss a beat. And I've been in meetings with him where I saw him knowing everybody else is wrong, but I'm going to let them get there on their own. And he didn't lean in and demand his way, and everybody was better for it. I think that critical eye without a critical spirit that is more needed in the 2020s than ever before. And beyond that, Pat, I don't really have an answer. My wife and I owned a bunch of retail businesses for a while, and we hired a bunch of part-time, late teen and early 20 somethings who didn't think anything about not showing up for a shift at the last moment.
Yeah.
And
No call. Yeah. No show, no call. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I got it figured out.
I definitely don't, because I'm so, law enforcement is so interpersonal communication and skills. And the number one skill cops really excel at is nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
And when you go to the remote environment, I think we just lose so much of that interpersonal connection. I can't, if I'm at the office and I'm the boss, I'm the manager, I'm the CEO, I can walk around the office and stop in a cubicle and things like that. But you're getting that nonverbal, and that's the danger I see. And I actually had, when COVID hit and our oldest granddaughter was in high school, and and they lived up in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got to go back to school, she was really disappointed.
Huh.
She liked learning remotely, and she could sit on her bunk bed and be in her jammies and all that kind of stuff, and was willing, in a way. She played sports, but so she had interaction with teammates, but she was willing to give up that interpersonal relationship building as a 15, 16-year-old, and to be isolated. And then they're going into the workforce, and they don't have the emotional learning skills that you and I got growing up. And I just was wondering if you've had to deal with that.
Well, truth of the matter is, I think it makes leadership in this generation. I mean, we always talk about the good old days. I think the 1950s were probably pretty tough, right? We're coming out of a World War II economy. I think that
in the Korean War,
60s and 70s with the social, I'm not sure there were ever the really good old days, but I think, you just identified that the researchers tell us that the Gen Z, this age group, what is it, 20 to 28, they are the most anxious generation out there. The combination of isolation and then this whole thing of social media, where every image they look at of somebody else, that person looks perfect, and they can't ever keep up to that. I think it creates real challenges in the workforce. So the best leaders realize this concept of leadership covenant that you and I talked about 20 minutes ago, where an important part of my job is not just bringing our KPIs to the table and making sure we deliver the reports that we needed to, or take care of the community that we're responsible for, or close the sales that we were supposed to close. An important part of this is me getting the barometer on my people and being able to keep them healthy. And man, in the 2020s, I think that means we've probably got to be out of the office at employees' kids' soccer games and meeting at the restaurant for beers and wings. And I think probably that's a more important job than ever for an effective leader, just being with their people.
Well, and showing appreciation. And this may sound sad, because if it becomes your habit, if you treat everybody with the mindset, it's not about you, it's about them. And he called servant leadership, call whatever you want, but it's, you fundamentally go, this life is not about me. It's about others. And that if I'm situationally aware and looking for opportunities to impact people's lives, and not in any big way. Now, I'm not talking about being a billionaire. And in simple things. At Christmas, I'm telling you, our trash guy, and we live out in the country a little bit, and so our trash guy and our one does trash and one does recycle. And at Christmas, I use like industrial tape with an envelope with the $25 gift card to King Supers, which is Kroger's here in Colorado, with a
card.
That card inside a card with the thank you. It says this: "Thanks for taking care of us this year."
Yeah,
and that you're showing appreciation. I wouldn't know the guy if I ran into him because I have a 500-foot driveway. I don't even know when he comes, but I appreciate the service that he provides us, and I thank him. And thank you is one of the two most important words you can say to somebody, but that becomes your habit. And I bet you do the same thing when you fly. When I'm getting off the plane, and I never fly first class because the institute at the university I contract with, no, back of the plane. Yeah. We're not paying for that first class ticket. But I thank the flight attendants that are at the where you're getting off the plane. I go, thank you for taking care of us today.
Yeah.
And if the pilots are there and the doors open, I stop and I holler in and say, "Hey, nice flight. Thank you."
Thank you. Good
and they may never hear that.
Yeah.
And if they're having and you know who Paul Harvey is, with
the
rest of the story.
We're dating ourselves here.
Yeah. You may never know the rest of the story of the impact you have in somebody's life, but if you live it in a intentional way at home, at work, and in your community, then hopefully it's always going to be a positive impact. Yeah. And even in bad times, it can still be a positive impact.
One of the challenges for me, real honestly, is while I speak for a living, I am really an introvert. I recharge my batteries by not interacting with people. And part of what I've had to learn, and I don't always do this well because I'm basically lazy, but part of what I've had to learn is treat people as individuals. I don't have to turn the charm on. I don't have to become an extrovert. Just make eye contact with that one person. But Pat, I'll also say I don't think I have any of this down yet. I'm still working on it. I am a student of leadership. I'm not a great leader myself. I can look at my mistakes and just realize, Andy, you never really learned that lesson. You talk about learning that lesson, but you keep doing that stupid thing. So I think what I am is I'm an observer of other people that I think are good leaders, knowing that, you know what, I'm on the path, but I haven't arrived yet.
It's Paul. It's the Apostle Paul. That's right. I've run the race. That leaders never arrive and go, man, now I can retire in life and life's going to be good. And no, until your last breath.
Because the other line that Paul says somewhere in one of his letters, he says, "The very things I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I find myself keep doing." Thanks be to God that he's the one that's got this all figured out, because we're all just kind of limping our way through this life at times.
I mean, all throughout Scripture, it's like that. You go Moses. He's like, "Hey, God, I don't speak very well. I appreciate the invitation to come to work for you and do this big thing. It's not me, And God's like, well, that's not what I asked you. And by the way, I got this guy, Aaron, he's going to give you a hand. And that we are so quick to see our shortcomings or the reasons why we can't do something. But the flip side is we expect everybody else to always be on their A game. And how you balance that is important. It's funny you say that about introverts, so that 50% of the population is introverted.
Yeah. Well, part of my problem is I have the pleasure of working with my wife. We've been doing this together for a number of years, and she is this wonderful extrovert. So Pat, the classic example for me, for a number of years, I was the MC for a local nonprofit. I did their major fundraiser every year. I'd raise hundreds of thousands of dollars at this Austin Country Club dinner where we'd do the special evening. And toward the end of the night, I'd ask them to pull out their checkbook. I was the one that was making it all happen. And the invitation always came to Miss Lynn and Dr. Andy Neillie, and she always got first billing. And I just realized it's because she makes a much better first impression than I do. And I love her for that, and I live with that. And, I recognize I'm aspiring to be a good leader. I'm on a journey. I'm better than I was 10 years ago, and I'm still making mistakes. One of my graduate school professors talked about the difference between static equilibrium and dynamic equilibrium. He said, Andy, you got a marble and you got a bowl, same marble, same bowl. Static equilibrium, you just drop the marble in the bowl and it rolls around for a while and eventually it just sits in the bowl. Said the type of leadership we're talking about, same marble, same bowl, but the bowl's been turned upside down. And now you got the marble up there and you're always going like this. You never quite get it right. I was too strict. I was too easy. I was too early. I was too late. I didn't step in when I should have stepped in. I stepped in too quickly. I think we're always mid-course correcting. And so, every leader probably should have a mirror in their office, not to gaze at constantly, but to look at periodically and say, mirrors are for glancing. How am I doing?
Yeah. And read John Maxwell's book, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. He crossed out the word lose, that you only lose if you don't learn. And that's the thing about leadership is everybody is a leader. I don't care
person of influence
who you are. If you have influence or impact in one person's life, to that person, you're a leader. It's not about bars, stars, and stripes and CEO or PhD and all these letters. Right. It's about being a person of influence and impact. I mean, Hitler was a great leader for all the wrong reasons. Kind of deal. Yeah. So it's why you're doing the things. Are you doing the right things, right time, right way, for the right reasons? Because if you can do the right thing, you do it the wrong time or the wrong way, it's going to blow up in your face.
Yeah.
And
that takes us back full circle. So we started our conversation talking about dogs, and every dog that has a master, right? And the dog's going to try to be obedient to that master. Are you being a good dog master or not? Well, the dog's never going to know that. They just wait for you to feed them.
Yeah. In a certain way, how many dogs though have you had that you can't teach a dog compassion or empathy and all those kinds of things, but we've had dogs that if I was having a bad day and would plop down on the couch, it'd come over and just curl up and I swear they sense your mood and your emotions, and they can't solve it, but they want to be there for you. And I think that's a big lesson in leadership. Is do you have daughters by any chance? Yeah. Your daughters come to you and they've got a problem. It's not that I want a solution. I just want you to listen. I need somebody to just be there and be present. And
it's interesting you mentioned dogs having that sixth sense about that being present thing. We are big CrossFitters in my family, and my wife and I go to a gym that's a dog-friendly gym, and it's full of dogs. And one of our rescued dogs was kind of a special needs dog. He'd had distemper as a puppy, and he just wasn't right. He was a golden retriever, but he was reactive and mean-spirited. And over time, the people at the gym learned to love him well. We'd clip him over by one of the garage doors, and people would go over to Mickey. And Pat, I'll tell you, we lost Mickey about 2.5 years ago. And the next time I went back to the gym was a pretty sad time for me back at the gym, because Mickey would normally be there next to the box and the dumbbells I was working with. There was a dog there. Pancake is the dog's name, a pit bull. And I sit down on the floor, and this dog did exactly what you're talking about. I didn't even know Pancake that well. This dog came over and sat in my lap and licked my face. I thought, there is that sixth sense you alluded to. And so maybe, I know we've got to start wrapping things up. Maybe part of that is, I think good leaders over time can kind of develop their own leadership sixth sense, if you would, that allows them to read the room and understand culture. You in law enforcement, mean, you guys blow me away because you have the ability to assess a domestic situation like instinctively after you get good at it and know, is this level 1? Is this level 10? What do we got going on? I think leaders, there may be some born leaders, but I think that type of sixth sense for leaders comes over time. A lot of
It
the lessons
does.
you and I talked about. Yeah.
And it's actually a lot of people mistaken it for a gift or a like literally a sixth sense, almost like prophetic or this. You know what law enforcement teaches you? It actually teaches your brain how to rapidly assess incoming information from your senses and then evaluate them very quickly. It's a skill that you learn if
over time
you take the time to learn it. You could walk through being a cop and do your whole career, and other cops are going to be going, man, I don't want them on a call with me because they have no situational awareness. They have no common sense and that kind of thing. But I think even in the private sector, the really good leaders, positional leaders, or even unofficial leaders on a team, their gift is that ability to analyze a lot of incoming information and process it quickly. And
so there's the book you and I need to write together: Leadership and Situational Awareness, or something along those lines. Because I think,
that'd be a blast. It'd be a blast because there was I'm going to end with this. I don't even remember the name of the movie, but it was a cop movie, and as a veteran officer has a rookie right out of the academy, and kind of deal, and they're behind a car, and the veteran cop goes, "That's a stolen car. We're going to stop it." And the rookie goes, "Well, you didn't even run the license plate."
Numbers.
And he goes, "Look at the license plate. What's wrong with it?" And the rookie's like, "Well, nothing. It's a license plate." Veteran cop, "There's dead bugs all over it. That's a front license plate. It doesn't belong on the back of a car. That's a stolen car." But that was situational awareness and processing that you go, "Oh man, what a really gifted." You learn that over time, what to look for and how to analyze it.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you, Andy?
Well, Neillie Leadership. So you see my name spelled on the screen there. You get the name spelled correctly, and it'll take you right to my website. And anybody just wants to jump on a 15-minute call and talk about leadership stuff, I'm always passionate to do that. There's a link at the top of my website for a quick 15-minute phone call. And then if they want to sign up, I love communicating about this stuff. I'm blogging regularly, and so there's links on my website to sign up for the leaders blog and things like that. So yeah, anybody wants to reach out, man, Pat, it's just been a pleasure. You and I did our pre-interview, and I think we both kind of agreed we were going to have this good a conversation. We did.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do this again at some point.
We will. And offline, man, I want to talk to you about that book, writing a book, because it is merging the public and private sector concepts and principles and everything. It's the same principles. It's the application. And how can we leave this world a better place than we found it? And that's one of the ways of doing it, is sharing the gifts and talents that God has given us. So, man, Andy, thank you so much for talking with us today, sharing your insights. People, go out there, get that. It's on Amazon. Get that book and get the rest of the story. And if today resonated with you, please share this with somebody that you know needs to hear this message, because they're struggling in their own leadership journey. And as I close every episode, always, always, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warriors and servants and leaders do every day, every time. Love you all, and see you next week.